The Grand Archive on planet Valoria was the largest building in the known galaxy. It stretched across 3 mountain ranges and reached so high into the purple sky that clouds formed inside its upper halls. For 300 years, the greatest minds from 12 different alien species had gathered here to solve one mystery. They had failed every single time Dr. Thalvine walked slowly through the central chamber. His silver scales caught the light from the floating crystal lamps above. His 4 eyes, each one a different shade of blue, stared at the object in the center of the room. It was a simple metal tablet, no bigger than a dinner plate, covered in strange symbols that no one could read. The tablet belonged to the predecessors. They were an ancient species that had disappeared 2 million years ago. No one knew what they looked like. No one knew why they vanished. But they had left behind technology that still powered half the galaxy. Their engines moved starships. Their generators lit entire worlds. Their medical devices could heal wounds that should have been fatal, and yet no one could read their writing. Thalvine had spent his entire life trying to solve this puzzle. On Valoria, his species lived for 400 years, and he had used every single one of those years studying this tablet. He had tried mathematical formulas. He had tried pattern recognition programs. He had tried connecting the symbols to sounds, to numbers, to chemical compounds. Nothing worked. Today, he would have to admit defeat in front of the entire Galactic Archaeological Council. The council members sat in floating chairs arranged in a great circle around the tablet. There were the Keth, who looked like giant insects with wings made of crystal. There were the Moravi, beings of pure energy who communicated through gravity waves. There were the Yendari, tall and thin with skin like tree bark. And there were representatives from 8 other species, all watching Thalvine with hope in their eyes. He hated to disappoint them. "My fellow scholars," Thalvine began, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. "I stand before you today with a heavy heart. We have applied every method known to our combined civilizations. We have used quantum computers that can perform 1 trillion calculations in a single second. We have consulted artificial intelligences older than most star systems. And yet, the script of the predecessors remains a mystery." A low murmur spread through the council. The Keth clicked their mandibles in frustration. The Moravi pulsed with dark colors that meant sadness. "Perhaps," said Ambassador Vex of the Endari, "the knowledge was never meant to be found. Perhaps the predecessors wished to keep their secrets." Thalvine shook his head. "I do not believe that. They left these tablets everywhere. On every world they touched, in every ruin they abandoned. They wanted us to find them. They wanted us to read them. We simply lack the ability." It was at that moment that the great doors at the far end of the chamber opened with a soft hiss. Everyone turned to look. 3 figures walked in, and they were unlike anything the council had seen before. They were small, barely half the height of a Yendari. They had soft skin in shades of brown and pink. They had only 2 eyes each, and those eyes were wide with wonder as they looked around the massive room. They were humans. Thalvine felt a flash of irritation. The humans were new to space travel. They had only discovered faster-than-light engines 50 years ago. Most species in the Galactic Compact considered them barely more than children, stumbling around the stars without understanding the great history they had walked into. But the Compact had rules. Every member species had to send representatives to major research projects. And so the humans had come, whether anyone wanted them or not. The leader of the human group stepped forward. He was a male with black hair and kind eyes. He wore a simple gray uniform with a small flag on his shoulder that Thalvine did not recognize. "I am Dr. Kevin Park," the human said. "This is my research assistant, Emily Stone, and our military escort, Captain Marcus Lee. We are honored to be here." Thalvin forced himself to be polite. "Welcome, Dr. Park. You may observe from the back of the chamber. Please try not to touch anything." Kevin nodded and led his small team to the observation gallery. They sat down on benches that were far too large for their bodies and began to watch the proceedings. Over the next few hours, the council debated what to do next. Some wanted to give up entirely. Others wanted to build even more powerful computers. A few suggested that maybe the tablets were not writing at all, but rather decorations with no meaning. Through it all, Kevin watched. He watched the way the alien scientists studied the tablet. He watched the tools they used and the questions they asked. He noticed something interesting. Every species approached the tablet the same way. They treated it like a mathematical puzzle. They looked for patterns and sequences. They tried to find a code that would unlock everything. But Kevin had spent his career studying dead languages on Earth. He had worked on scripts that humans themselves could not read. Languages from civilizations that had disappeared thousands of years ago. And he knew something that the aliens did not seem to understand. Not every language was logical. Not every writing system followed rules. Sometimes language was messy. Sometimes it was beautiful. Sometimes it was both at the same time. Emily leaned close to him. "What are you thinking?" she whispered. Kevin did not answer right away. He was staring at the holographic image of the tablet that floated in the center of the room. The symbols looked random, but there was something about them that felt familiar. He could not explain it yet. "I am thinking," he finally said, "that everyone in this room is very smart. But they are all smart in the same way." Captain Lee looked up from the book he was reading. "Is that a bad thing?" Kevin smiled. "It might be. When everyone thinks the same way, they all make the same mistakes." He leaned back in his seat and continued to watch. Somewhere in those strange symbols was a message. He was sure of it. And he was going to find it, even if it took him years. The council session ended without any new discoveries. The alien scientists packed up their equipment and left the chamber one by one. Thalvin was the last to go. He paused at the door and looked back at the humans still sitting in the gallery. For a moment, he almost said something, almost asked what they thought. But he shook his head and walked away. What could humans possibly know that his people did not? It was a question he would think about many times in the months to come. 3 weeks passed slowly in the Grand Archive. Kevin spent every day sitting in the observation gallery, watching the alien scientists work. He took notes on a small tablet computer. He drew pictures of the symbols. He asked questions that the aliens found strange or even foolish. Emily sat beside him most days. She was younger than Kevin, still finishing her studies back on Earth when this mission was announced. She had joined because she wanted adventure. She had not expected to spend her time sitting on a bench, watching people fail. "They ran the same test again today," she said one afternoon. "The quantum frequency analysis. That is the 4th time this week." Kevin nodded without looking up from his notes. "They keep hoping for a different result. But that is not how science works." "No," Kevin agreed. "It is not." Captain Lee was reading another book. He had brought a whole bag of paperbacks with him, old adventure stories from Earth. The aliens thought this was very strange. Why read words on paper when you could download information directly into your brain? But Lee liked the feel of pages between his fingers. It helped him think. "So what are we doing here?" he asked. "I mean, really. They do not want our help. They barely look at us." Kevin put down his tablet and stretched his arms. His back hurt from sitting on the hard bench for so long. "We are here because the rules say we have to be. But that does not mean we cannot be useful." "How?" "We do not have their computers. We do not have their experience. We have only been in space for 50 years. They have been out here for thousands. Kevin smiled. It was a small smile, the kind that appeared when he was thinking about something interesting. That might be exactly why we can help. He stood up and walked to the railing of the gallery. Below him, the tablet floated in its preservation field, turning slowly in the light. The symbols on its surface seemed to dance as the angle changed. "Tell me something," Kevin said. "When you look at those symbols, what do you see?" Emily stood up and joined him at the railing. She squinted at the holographic display that showed the tablet in detail. "I see shapes, lines and curves. Some of them look like they repeat. Good. What else?" She studied the image more carefully. Some of the lines are thicker than others, and they taper at the ends, like someone drew them with a brush instead of a pen. Kevin nodded. The Valorians think those variations are mistakes, imperfections in the metal. But what if they are not? Lee put down his book and walked over to join them. "You think they mean something?" "I think they might. On Earth, we have many writing systems that use brushstrokes. Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Arabic calligraphy. In those systems, the thickness of the line matters. The direction matters. The way the stroke ends matters." Emily's eyes widened. "You think the predecessors wrote like that?" "I do not know yet, but I think it is possible." She pulled out her own tablet and brought up the high-resolution scans of the artifact. She had been looking at these images for weeks, and something had been bothering her. Something she could not quite name. Now, listening to Kevin talk, she suddenly understood what it was. "Kevin, look at this." She zoomed in on a cluster of symbols near the edge of the tablet. "See how these shapes are arranged? They all point in the same direction, like they are flowing towards something." Kevin leaned closer. His heart beat faster. "You are right. There is a direction to them, a movement. But the aliens have been reading them the other way. They start from the top and go down, because that is how their languages work. The Valorians read from top to bottom, so they assumed everyone does." Emily scrolled through more images. The pattern was everywhere once you knew what to look for. The symbols had a flow, a direction, like water running downhill. But the aliens had been reading against the current the whole time. "There is something else," she said slowly. "Look at this figure here." She pointed to a symbol that appeared several times on the tablet. "The aliens think it is abstract, just a shape. But if you turn it around..." She rotated the image on her screen. Kevin caught his breath. "It is a person," he whispered. "A stick figure, like a child would draw. They've been looking at it upside down. The head is at the bottom. The feet are at the top." Kevin grabbed her arm. "Emily, we need to see the original, not the hologram, the actual tablet." She looked at him with wide eyes. "They will never let us touch it. They do not even let their own junior scientists near it. Then we do not touch it. We just look. But we need to see it with our own eyes." Captain Lee stepped forward. "I can make that happen. The military escort badge gives me security clearance. I can get us into the chamber after hours." Kevin hesitated. What they were planning was against the rules. If they were caught, they could be sent back to Earth in disgrace. The whole human space program could suffer. But he thought about the tablet. He thought about the message that might be hidden inside it. And he thought about all the alien scientists who had spent centuries looking at it the wrong way. "Do it," he said. "Tonight." That night, the three humans walked into the central chamber. The lights were dim. The floating crystal lamps glowed with just enough brightness to see by. The tablet sat in its preservation field, untouched and silent. Kevin walked around it slowly. He looked at it from every angle. He crouched down and looked up at it. He stood on his toes and looked down. Finally, he stopped moving. He stared at the tablet for a long moment. Then he laughed. "What is it?" Emily asked. "What do you see?" Kevin turned to face her. His eyes were bright with excitement. "Everything. I see everything. And tomorrow, I am going to tell the council." He looked back at the tablet, at the symbols that had confused the greatest minds in the galaxy for 300 years. They really were holding it upside down. The next morning, Kevin sent a message to Dr. Thalvin. He asked for permission to address the council. The reply came back within minutes. Request denied. Observation personnel do not speak at council sessions. Kevin read the message twice. Then he sent another one. I believe I have solved the tablet. I request an audience. This time, the reply took longer. Kevin imagined Thalvin sitting in his office, his 4 eyes blinking in confusion. A human claiming to solve what the great scholars of the galaxy could not? It must have seemed like a joke, but finally, the response arrived. You have 5 minutes. Do not waste our time. Emily helped Kevin prepare. She printed out images and organized his notes. Captain Lee polished his uniform and checked his sidearm. Not because he expected trouble, but because looking professional might help the aliens take them seriously. When they walked into the council chamber, every seat was full. Word had spread quickly. A human was going to speak. This was either going to be very funny or very embarrassing. Either way, no one wanted to miss it. Dr. Thalvin stood at the front of the room, his silver scales dull in the artificial light. He looked tired. 3 centuries of failure would make anyone tired. Dr. Park, he said, you claim to have solved the great mystery of our age. Please, share your discovery. His voice was polite, but Kevin could hear the doubt beneath it. Kevin walked to the center of the room. He felt very small standing there, surrounded by beings who had been traveling the stars before humanity learned to use fire. His heart was pounding. His hands were sweating, but he forced himself to speak clearly. Thank you, Dr. Thalvin. I know you do not expect much from me. My species is young. We have only been part of your community for a short time. But sometimes that can be an advantage. A Keth delegate clicked her mandibles. An advantage? How can ignorance be an advantage? Not ignorance, Kevin said. Perspective. Everyone in this room has been studying the predecessor script for generations. You have built theories upon theories. You have used the most advanced technology in the galaxy, but you have all been making one simple mistake. He walked to the holographic display and looked at the floating image of the tablet. The symbols glowed softly in the dim light. On my planet, he continued, we have thousands of different languages, thousands of different writing systems. Some of them read left to right. Some of them read right to left. Some of them read top to bottom. And some of them read bottom to top. Dr. Thalvin frowned. We are aware of linguistic diversity, Dr. Park. We have accounted for every possible reading direction. Have you? Kevin reached out and touched the holographic controls. May I? Thalvin hesitated and nodded. Kevin took a deep breath. Then he rotated the image 180 degrees. You have been holding it upside down, he said. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then several of the alien delegates made sounds of confusion or amusement. The Endar ambassador actually laughed, a dry rustling sound like leaves blowing in the wind. This is absurd, Thalvin said. We calibrated the orientation using gravitational stress analysis. The heavy end of the tablet is clearly the bottom. On your world, maybe, Kevin said. But what if the predecessors did not think that way? What if they came from a world where things were different? He pointed at one of the symbols on the rotated image. Look at this figure. Before, when you looked at it, you saw an abstract shape. But now, Emily stepped forward and highlighted the symbol. Now it is a person, standing upright, with the head at the top and the feet At the bottom, the chamber grew quiet again, but this time it was a different kind of quiet. Kevin could see the alien scientists leaning forward, looking at the image with new eyes. And these symbols here, Kevin continued, pointing to a sequence near the edge. They are not random patterns. They are a sequence showing movement, like pictures that tell a story, but you have been reading them backward. He walked around the display, tracing the flow of the symbols with his finger. The predecessors were not mathematical beings like the Valorians. They did not communicate in chemical signals like the Keth. They were visual thinkers, artists. They wrote in pictures, and they read from bottom to top. Why? Asked the Moravi delegate, its energy form pulsing with curiosity. Why would any species read upward? Emily answered this time. We are not sure yet, but Kevin thinks they might have evolved looking up at something. A sky with important patterns. A forest canopy. A parent species that was taller than them. Their whole way of seeing the world would have been oriented upward. Dr. Thalveen was staring at the rotated image. His four eyes moved independently, each one focusing on a different part of the tablet. Kevin could see something changing in his expression. This symbol here, Thalveen said slowly. We always thought it was a mathematical operator, a function sign. But if you read it the other way, it is a sun, Kevin said, rising over a horizon. Thalveen made a sound that Kevin had never heard before. It was soft and strange, somewhere between a gasp and a song. Later, Emily would tell him that it was the Valorian expression of wonder. By the ancient stars, Thalveen whispered. It is a history. They are telling us a story. The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted questions. Scientists rushed to their computers to check the new orientation against their databases. The Keth began clicking so fast that their translation devices could not keep up. Kevin stepped back and let them work. He found Emily and Captain Lee waiting for him at the edge of the crowd. You did it, Emily said. Her eyes were shining. You actually did it. Kevin shook his head. We did it. You were the one who noticed the directionality. You saw what I was only guessing at. Captain Lee clapped him on the shoulder. What happens now? Kevin looked back at the alien scientists, who were already making more progress in 5 minutes than they had in 5 decades. The symbols on the tablet were starting to make sense. The story of the predecessors was finally being told. Now, Kevin said, we find out what they wanted to tell us. Dr. Thalveen appeared beside them. His 4 eyes were wet with tears that sparkled like tiny stars. Dr. Park, he said, I owe you an apology. We underestimated your people. We thought you had nothing to teach us. Kevin smiled. We are all learning together now. Thalveen nodded slowly. Yes, I suppose we are. He looked at the tablet, then back at Kevin. Would you and your team be willing to help us with the translation? We could use your fresh eyes. Kevin did not hesitate. It would be our honor. And so began the greatest collaboration in galactic history. Humans and aliens, working side by side, reading the words of a civilization that had vanished 2 million years ago. The story was just beginning. 6 months passed like a dream. The Grand Archive transformed into something new. Where once there had been frustration and silence, now there was excitement and noise. Scientists from all 12 species worked together, filling the great halls with the sound of discovery. Kevin and Emily had their own workspace now. It was a small room near the central chamber, filled with screens and computers and piles of printed notes. They worked 18 hours a day, stopping only to eat and sleep. Sometimes they forgot to do even that. Dr. Thalveen visited them often. The old Valorian had changed since the day of Kevin's revelation. He smiled more. He asked questions instead of giving orders. He admitted when he was wrong, which was something his colleagues said they had never seen before. The translation is going faster than we ever imagined, Thalvin said one evening, settling into a chair that was far too small for his large frame. We have decoded over 60% of the tablet. In 3 centuries, we decoded nothing. In 6 months, we have decoded most of it. Emily looked up from her screen. The key was understanding how they thought. Once we knew they were visual thinkers, everything started to make sense. It is more than that, Thalvin said. It is your approach, the way you make connections that we would never see. Yesterday, one of your linguists compared a predecessor symbol to a traffic sign from your planet. A traffic sign. And she was right. The meaning was almost identical. Kevin laughed. We have a lot of experience with visual communication. Road signs, emoji, memes. We have been using pictures to share ideas for a long time. Thalvin shook his head in wonder. Your species never stops surprising me. Captain Lee walked in carrying a tray of food. He had taken on the role of making sure the scientists did not work themselves to death. Dinner time. No arguments. They ate together while Emily explained the latest breakthrough. The tablet was not just a single message. It was a key, a guide. It explained how to read all the other predecessor artifacts scattered across the galaxy. Every ruin we have ever found has tablets like this one, she said between bites of food. Thousands of them. Tens of thousands. We always thought they were random. Just decorations or labels. But they are not, Kevin continued. They are chapters of a single story. Each ruin holds one piece of the puzzle. And now that we can read them, we can finally put the pieces together. Thalvin leaned forward. What does the story say? What happened to the predecessors? Kevin and Emily exchanged a look. This was the part they had been struggling with. The part that was hard to explain. They knew the end was coming, Emily said softly. Something was happening to their civilization. They do not say exactly what. Maybe they did not understand it themselves. But they knew they were running out of time. A war? Thalvin asked. A natural disaster? Kevin shook his head. We do not think so. It seems like it was something inside them. Their society had grown too fast. They built technology they no longer understood. They forgot how to solve problems without machines. They became... He searched for the right word. Fragile. They could see what was coming, Emily said. They could have tried to save themselves. They could have fought against it. But instead, they made a choice. They decided to leave something behind. She pulled up a holographic map of the galaxy. Dots of light marked the locations of known predecessor ruins. There were hundreds of them, scattered across thousands of light years. We always thought these ruins were random, she said. Collapsed cities, abandoned outposts, places where the predecessors lived and died. But look at them. She connected the dots with lines. A pattern emerged. The ruins were not random at all. They formed a shape, a spiral that curved through the galaxy like a great arm reaching toward the center. They are breadcrumbs, Kevin said. Each ruin contains one piece of their knowledge, one chapter of their story. They placed them carefully in exactly the right positions, so that species who reached a certain level of development would find them. Thalvin stared at the map. They knew we would come. They prepared gifts for children they would never meet. Yes, and there is more. Emily zoomed in on a point near the center of the spiral. The tablet mentions a final destination, a place where everything comes together. They called it the repository. What is it? Captain Lee asked. We are not sure yet. The translation is not complete. But it seems to be. Emily hesitated. It seems to be them. The predecessors. Their memories. Their art. Their music. Everything they ever were. Thalvin stood up suddenly. His scales were flushed with color. Are you saying they preserved themselves? That they still exist somewhere? Not alive, Kevin said carefully, but not completely gone either. They found a way to save who they were, and they left us the key to find them. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Thalvin spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. We must go there. We must see what they left behind. The coordinates are in the tablet, Emily said, but it will take time to reach them. The repository is hidden somewhere dangerous, somewhere we never thought to look. Kevin pulled up another image. It showed a swirling mass of light and darkness, a whirlpool in space that consumed everything that came too close. It is hidden inside the accretion disk of a black hole, he said. Protected by technology we cannot even begin to understand. The predecessors built it to last forever. They wanted to make sure it would still be there when someone finally came looking. Captain Lee whistled softly. Flying into a black hole. That sounds like suicide. Maybe, or maybe the predecessors left us a way in. We just have to find it. Thalvin was already moving toward the door. I must speak with the council. We need to organize an expedition. Ships, supplies, the best scientists from every species. He paused at the doorway and looked back at Kevin. You started this. Dr. Park, you should be the one to lead it. Kevin opened his mouth to protest, but Thalvin was already gone. Emily reached over and squeezed his hand. Ready for an adventure? Kevin looked at the image of the black hole, spinning silently in the darkness of space. Somewhere inside, it was the answer to every question they had ever asked. The wisdom of a species that had mastered the stars before Earth was born. Ready, he said. Let us go find out what they wanted to tell us. The expedition took 2 years to organize. 12 species sent their finest ships. Scientists, engineers, doctors, and soldiers from across the galaxy came together for the greatest journey in history. And at the front of it all, leading the way, was a human ship called the Rosetta. Kevin stood on the bridge, watching the stars streak past the windows. Behind him, Emily was checking the navigation systems. Captain Lee sat in the pilot's chair, his hands steady on the controls. Around them, a fleet of 100 ships followed in perfect formation. We are approaching the target zone, Emily announced. The black hole is just ahead. Kevin had never seen a black hole before. None of them had. The images they had studied did not prepare them for the reality. It was a wound in space, a circle of absolute darkness surrounded by a ring of fire. Light itself bent and twisted around it, creating patterns that hurt to look at. Beautiful, Captain Lee whispered. And terrifying. The predecessors chose this place for a reason, Kevin said. Nothing can escape a black hole. Not light. Not time. Not information. If you wanted to hide something forever, this is where you would put it. Thalvin's voice came through the communication system. He was aboard his own ship, the Silver Memory, flying close behind the Rosetta. Our sensors detect an object in the accretion disk. It should not be there. Nothing should be able to exist that close to the event horizon. Emily checked her readings. I see it too. It is big. Very big. And it is not natural. The repository, Kevin said. They really built it. They really made it last. Captain Lee adjusted their course. The Rosetta moved closer to the black hole, fighting against the pull of gravity that tried to drag it down into the darkness. The ship shook and groaned, but it held together. There, Emily pointed at the main screen. I can see it. The repository appeared through the chaos of the accretion disk like a dream rising from nightmare. It was made of crystal and light, a structure that seemed to glow from within. Shapes moved across its surface, patterns that looked almost like the symbols on the tablet. And then something happened that no one expected. The Rosetta's hull began to glow. What is happening? Captain Lee shouted. Are we under attack? Kevin watched as symbols appeared on the walls of the ship. Predecessor script, shining with soft golden light. It spread across every surface, covering the metal with ancient writing. They recognize us, Emily breathed. They know we can read their language. They are welcoming us. The shaking stopped. The pull of gravity faded. The Rosetta floated in perfect stillness, cradled by technology that was 2 million years old. A voice filled the ship. It was not a human voice, but it was not alien either. It was something in between, like the echo of a song from very far away. To our children who learned to read. To the ones who looked at our words and saw not puzzles, but stories. We have been waiting for you. Kevin felt tears on his face. He was not ashamed of them. Around him, he could hear Emily crying too. Even Captain Lee wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. You are the first to understand, the voice continued. You are the inheritors. An airlock appeared on the side of the repository. It had not been there before. The predecessors had created it just for them in that very moment, because they had finally arrived. Thalvine's ship pulled alongside the Rosetta. The Valorian scientist appeared on the view screen, his 4 eyes wide with wonder. Dr. Park, he said, I believe you should go first. This is your discovery, your moment. Kevin shook his head. No, we go together. All of us. That is what the predecessors would have wanted. Thalvine smiled. It was a strange expression on his alien face, but Kevin had learned to recognize it. Yes, I believe you are right. The airlock opened. Kevin stepped through first, with Emily and Captain Lee right behind him. Thalvine followed with a dozen other scientists from species across the galaxy. The inside of the repository was impossible. It stretched in every direction, bigger on the inside than it could possibly be on the outside. Walls of crystal displayed moving images. Halls branched off into infinity. Music played somewhere in the distance, melodies that had not been heard for 2 million years. And everywhere, there was knowledge. Libraries of books that were not books. Museums of art that seemed to move and breathe. Gardens of plants that no longer existed anywhere else in the universe. They saved everything, Emily whispered. Everything they ever made. Everything they ever thought. Everything they ever dreamed. A figure appeared before them. It was made of light, shaped like something that might have been a predecessor long ago. It had a kind face and gentle hands. Welcome, children, it said. We have so much to show you. So much to give you. Kevin stepped forward. Why? He asked. Why did you do all this? Why save everything if you knew you were going to disappear? The figure smiled. Because knowledge is not meant to be owned. It is meant to be shared. We grew too proud. We thought we could keep everything for ourselves. That was our mistake. When we realized we were ending, we chose to give it all away. But why us? Thalvine asked. Why leave it for species who would not exist for millions of years? Because you needed time. Time to grow. Time to learn. Time to become ready. The figure looked at Kevin, then at Thalvine, then at all the others. Look at yourselves. 12 species working together. You came here not as conquerors, but as students. That is exactly what we hoped for. It gestured toward the infinite halls of the repository. This is our gift. Not just technology, though there is technology here. Not just knowledge, though there is knowledge. But a second chance. A warning. Learn from our mistakes. Do not repeat them. Kevin thought about Earth. He thought about all the wars and the hatred and the fear that had filled human history. He thought about how close humanity had come to destroying itself over and over again. We will try, he said. I cannot promise we will succeed. But we will try. The figure nodded. That is all we ask. Over the following weeks, the expedition explored the repository. They found cures for diseases that had plagued the galaxy for centuries. They found energy sources that could power planets without pollution. They found art so beautiful that it made hardened soldiers weep. But more than anything, they found each other. Scientists from rival species worked side by side. Old enemies shared meals and stories. The barriers that had divided the galaxy for thousands of years began to crumble. And back on Earth, something changed. News of the discovery spread across the planet. People looked up at the stars and realized they were part of something bigger than themselves. Schools started teaching predecessor history alongside human history. Children drew pictures of the repository and dreamed of visiting it someday. Kevin returned to Earth a hero, but he did not feel like one. He felt like a student who had just passed his first test and knew there were many more to come. Emily went back to her studies, but now she had a new subject. She wanted to understand how the predecessors had created their language, so she could help teach it to others. Captain Lee retired from the military and became a teacher. He told stories about the repository to anyone who would listen. And Dr. Thalvine, the old Valorian who had spent 4 centuries failing to solve the tablet, became the new head of the Galactic Archaeological Council. His first act was to create a special position for humans. Not as observers, but as full partners. "Your species has a gift," he told Kevin during their last meeting. "You see things differently. You ask questions we forget to ask. The galaxy needs that." Kevin smiled. "My grandmother used to say that the most important skill was not knowing the answers. It was knowing how to ask the questions." Thalvine made the soft singing sound that was the Valorian version of laughter. "And sometimes it is knowing which way is up." They shook hands, human and alien, standing in the shadow of the Grand Archive where it all began. "What now?" Thalvine asked. Kevin looked up at the purple sky of Valoria. Somewhere beyond those clouds, beyond the atmosphere, the stars were waiting. Millions of predecessor ruins still had not been explored. Billions of mysteries still waited to be solved. "Now," he said, "we keep reading." And across the galaxy, in universities and homes and ships sailing through the darkness between stars, beings of every species opened their books and began to learn. The children of the predecessors had finally come home.